Before I start this lesson, I'd like to give all praise to the Most High Yahweh, B'Shem Yahushua, B'Shem HaKodesh. Christianity, the origins of a pagan religion, by Philippe Walter. You see, Easter, Ishtar, Astarte, Isis, all the same. These deceptions are being revealed, and we have a writer by the name of Philippe Walter who explains his people's, the Edomites, the Europeans, Gentile rituals as relates to this pagan religion. So let's take a read of the book. In the beginning of the chapter, it gives details on this particular holiday. It's in chapter 5, the transitional period of Easter. 8 periods of 40 days theoretically correspond to 320 days, whereas the solar year consists of 365 days plus a few hours. The gap, in fact, comes from the interval that exists between a calendar based on the rhythms of the lunar phases, like the calendar of the so-called barbarian peoples before the Roman conquest, and a solar calendar. Now you have to understand that word barbarian just means non-Romans. It just means non-Romans of the time. That's all it meant. It didn't mean like we think today of a cruel people or a base people. It just meant they were non-Romans. The Romans thought themselves better than everybody around them at the time. Hence the reason why they took over the land of Israel during the time of the Messiah. Reading on, the movable feast, or celebration that is, of Easter is the key to the entire medieval calendar. It introduces a dephasing in the 40-day rhythms analyzed here, but in fact, simply confirms the principle. We know that Easter is a movable holiday that can fall between March 22nd and April 25th, because they base it upon pagan rituals associated with the moon. 40 days before Easter, an early Mardi Gras can find itself much closer to Candlemas. These are all subjects that are previously mentioned in the book, Candlemas and Mardi Gras, while an Easter holiday occurring later will make Mardi Gras a month later. In the interval, Lent, these are all pagan things, imposes a strictness and inflexible law of 40 days, or carame, that is Lent, comes from the Latin quadragesimina, which refers to 40. Now, the passage, and then we're going to get into the details. This is just the introduction to it. The passage. Easter, or Pax in French, comes from the popular Latin Pascua and the Greek Pascha, formed from the Hebrew Pesach, meaning passage. The Christian holiday of Easter, in fact, consists of a reply to the Jewish Passover, or actually it should be the Israelite Passover. The Jewish people celebrate the Passover on a different time frame and on a different schedule as well. Now, Judaism celebrates Passover in commemoration of a passage, that of the Hebrews over the Red Sea when they were pursued by the Egyptians. We know that. Now, we're just going to go on to get to the point about Easter. There's a lot of details leading up to it. We're just going to go ahead and get to the point. All right, we're going to start on page 102, the instruments of darkness. The instruments of darkness. The Easter festival is the symbolic interpretation of a passage from one season to the next. The passage from the death of winter to the life of springtime. Easter can be compared to certain pagan festivals that coincide with the spring equinox. You see, that's what they do. They're mixing solar and lunar. These festivals, so you can understand, the equinox is a day where it's equal daylight and equal nighttime. Happens twice a year. The winter solstice and the spring solstice. Spring equinox and the winter equinox. These festivals have allowed rituals to survive that have been so seamlessly integrated into the Christian commemorations, or things that they do year after year, that their pagan origin can no longer be discerned. Or put another way, people are used to doing things for a number of years and they think it's normal and it's the right thing to do, even though it is wrong. Such as the disobedience of the Israelites for over 2,700 years. Not all of them, but some of them. The Lord has always had an elect or a amount of Israelites that would follow the law. Continue on. In certain regions, there still exists the practice of making the rounds with rattles on the Friday and Saturday before Easter. During the temporary absence of the bells that have left for Rome, the children shake their rattles and thus keep the villagers informed of the schedule of church services. Lepers likewise rattled during the Middle Ages to warn people of their presence, because it was a very infectious disease, and leprosy was the loss of melanin in the Bible. But today they have changed it. The Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, has changed it to having some sort of swelling in the face and in the body, as well as disfigurement, because your face tends to fall apart. It like disintegrates. So lepers likewise rattled during the Middle Ages to warn people of their presence. In the Barol's 12th century romance Tristan, rattles were called Tartari, perhaps hearkening to Tartari, which is a land of the Edomites. It's the land of the Edomites. Tartari is the land of the Edomites, which Christians viewed as identical to the domain of the devil. And that makes sense, because Esau, Edom is the devil, or one that opposes the Lord and acts in the service of the devil. One of the prayers said for a funeral mass, this is where Catholicism is mixed in here, includes these words, quote, Lord, J-word, King of glory, deliver the souls of all the deceased faithful from the tortures of hell and the bottomless lake. Okay, and there is no such thing as hell under the earth. Hell is on the earth under the sun, in accordance with Ecclesiastes. Deliver them from the lion's jaw, that they may not be swallowed by Tartari. The Tartari of ancient Greece, here we go back, this is the Edomites, the Greek Edomites, the Gentiles, survived in Christianity. They survived in Christianity to designate the infernal river which the soul would have to cross once it left its dead body. Around the 8th century, it became customary to stop using bells during the 3 days before Easter, though this custom was not codified in the liturgical manuals until the 9th century. So we're talking about 100 years, somewhere within a 100-year period, they changed this particular ritual. From the Thursday to Saturday before Easter, all metal bells were banished and replaced by wooden instruments. Claude Levi-Strauss has mentioned a comparable custom in ancient China. You see, this is more and more paganism from the Gentiles. This time it's the Asian Gentiles. Claude Levi-Strauss has mentioned a comparable custom in ancient China that took place at the same time of the year. The 12th century, the custom of using these, quote, instruments of darkness, these bells and or wooden instruments, was observed throughout the West. Now, the West is a code word for all of the Europeans. That's what they mean when they say the West today in modern news. It's talking about the Europeans all around the world. Although this pagan custom, it's telling you right there, although this pagan custom made its way into Christianity quite early on, in order to grasp its meaning, it is necessary to turn once more to medieval folklore. And at the bottom of the note for Tartari. Tartari also refers to the Asian region of the east of the Urals, although in the Middle Ages it served as a blanket term for any place that was in neither Europe nor Africa. So Tartari was, now Asia includes what they call Europe today. It was all called Asia, but then the Europeans separated themselves from the rest of the continent in colors on the map. Going on to page 103. The ritual production of a specific noise is characteristic of the Pascal period. The word in Old French used to describe this noisy commotion as rabast. And folklore generally attributes the cause of rabast to goblins or small demons. Some have even tried to establish a linguistic connection between this term and the term Sabbath. You see, and there's no correlation except that it might have been done on the Sabbath. In fact, the din caused by rattles was intended to drown out the noise made by demons, the better to exorcise them. So there was a period of time where there was some sort of disturbance among the people that they attributed to the noise of demons, and the way to fight it was to use these rattles of wooden instruments, and before that it was metal bells. Bells are the instruments normally used for the exorcism of demons, for it is said that their sound sends fleeing the evil spirits that infest the air. Because remember, Satan is a power of the air, right? So, and it says spirits, we talk about plural, not a singular infestation or possession, but multiple spirits within a person. When the bells disappeared and could not be used, it became necessary to find substitute instruments that could perform the same apotropaic function. In some Bruegel's engravings, there are figures chasing devils with hammer blows, but it is in the ritual hullabaloo, and that reminds me of the Bugaloo people, the Bugaloo group of the Edomites, that we can find the practice of creating noise associated with a myth and a rite that justifies its existence. Now, Purgatory and March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. Okay, and they just did that little holiday last month. In the heart of the equinoctial period, the great Celtic saint of transition, St. Patrick, the national hero of Ireland, is celebrated on March 17th. We can find, so this comes from Ireland. Okay, this comes from the Edomites in Ireland. Now we do know that there were so-called Black Irish, so they were taken over by the Pale Faces, and then they became the Irish. All right. We can find mention of this feast day in the ancient martyrologies of Bebe, Flores, Edom, Raban, Muir, and Yisrael. We should also note that Patrick is celebrated not only in Ireland, but in Scotland, France, and Spain as well. Now it's all over the world, right? Wherever Esau is, you're going to find these holidays, because the majority of them were created by the Edomites. They are the most prevalent holidays that are celebrated by every Gentile on the planet. Moving on. There exist several different versions of the life of the saint. And that makes sense, because in order to propagate your BS, you're going to make up stories to support it. The oldest of these date from the second half of the 7th century, that's the 600s, and are emblematic of a vast movement of Christianization that was then affecting the Celtic paganism. The life of St. Patrick is an odd blend of chronicle, edifying story, and marvelous legend. It is also, and perhaps primarily, a prodigious assemblage of Celtic mystic motifs and biblical themes. They merged their pagan ideas, practices with the Bible in Christianity. What can be perceived, therefore, are the methods of Christianization that touch the very depths of Celtic beliefs attached to Irish soil. St. Patrick is clearly associated with what is known as the whole of purgatory, whole as H-O-L-E, or a opening, purgatory. That is the belief according to which it is possible to enter into and travel in the other world, which became Christianized as purgatory, as the purgatory. You see, this is telling you all about this false Catholic belief in this transitional place. The whole of the Isle of Dirge, or Derg, through which it is said purgatory can be reached, is not an imaginary sight. This abyss was reworked into a vaulted construction, so they must have found a hole in the ground and called it purgatory, probably during prehistoric times, and in a very remote past served as a chamber of visions. So this place was full of spirits. Perhaps it was the home for certain rites and mysteries similar to those practiced in the cave of Trophonius that transported to Ireland at the beginning of the Christian era. So it went from one pagan area location to another pagan area location. Certainly, the place calls to mind the esoteric rites specific to old shamanic customs that had been introduced into the Celtic religion. During the Middle Ages, all right, and that was a period of about 1,000 years, all right. During the Middle Ages, at the time of the reign of Henry II, Plantagenet, which is 1154 to 1189, monks, this is unique also to the so-called Catholic religion, having monks, and the monks were heavy destroyers of the Israelites. These monasteries were heavy destroyers of the Israelites. Monks built a monastery on the Isle of Regis and organized a kind of pilgrimage descent into the hole of St. Patrick. Like I said, they found a hole in the ground and just named it. Placing under the saint's authority the rites of voyaging to the other world, which had become purgatory. You see, had become, meaning they made up something at a particular time. In this case, it was in the 12th century in the 1100s AD. Indeed, purgatory has all the appearances of being a Christian reformulation of the Celtic otherworld. You see, so the Catholic purgatory is nothing more than a reformulation of the former pagan Celtic otherworld, which is increasingly confused with the world of the dead, though it was originally the dwelling of gods and magical beings. This is things from the Gentiles, okay? We don't believe in these magical beings, and there are no gods. There are rulers, gods being ruler, magistrate, judge, but they're talking about spiritual entities. As for St. Patrick, his commemoration during the Paschal period, or during the Passover period, and his associations with a mythical otherworld brings to mind an obvious comparison to the Messiah, who went down into hell after his death to free the souls of the just. This infernal voyage is suggestive of many others in countless mythologies. Mythology just means stories. It doesn't mean something that's not true. A myth does not mean something that is not true. The original meaning of the word myth is a story, a narrative. Okay, so there are countless mythologies or countless stories or narratives that tell of a crossing to death, a catabasis, followed almost immediately by a return to the human world. Now, we know that's not true. You don't go down and then come back. The Lord says you come back in the third or fourth generation. The god or demigod psychopomps that accomplish fairly perilous journeys often act in obedience to cosmic injunctions, whatever that means, because they don't really explain it. Thus, their voyage to the beyond is most often inscribed inside a sacred time and space that the calendrical rites periodically maintain and remember. So there's people who are doing recordation, or they're recording these things. So April 14th, we just passed that 3 days ago, the day of Saint Benezet, bridge builder and the boatman. Now this is crazy. Saint Benezet, another saint involved with, quote, crossing over, is commemorated during the Paschal period or the Passover period, although his legend has remained removed from the great hagiographies. It nevertheless holds many interesting aspects that shed light on the Paschal or Passover myth or story narrative of passage in its pre-Christian form, before Christianity came in. This is all the paganism that the Europeans that adopted Christianity then took and married together with all the other pagan beliefs. We know of the life of Saint Benezet thanks to a 13th century old Provençal text. Now, 13th century would be the 1200s. So this is 100 years later after the other one. Accompanied by acts written in Latin. Now, Latin is a dead language, although we have the Roman Catholic Church that does their A lot of their prayers and instructions in Latin, a dead language, a language that nobody really knows. Of course, it is all too easy to underscore the unlikelihood of a legend or tradition that some have sought to pass off as a historical truth. And this is the case in Christianity of all the holidays, whether it be Christmas, or whether it be Thanksgiving, whether it be St. Valentine's Day, whether it be Year New Day. Okay, so they have a host of this mess. Yet at times it is precisely such legends that are capable of revealing the pagan mindset that was reworked by Christian hagiography. As we have seen, rigorous historical study has yet to come to grips with such documents, which might well lead to a simple annihilation of a particular saint's tradition, for in many cases these legends are the sole objective reference in a subject. Saint Benazet is celebrated on April 14th, a springtime date that reveals the original pagan aspects of Easter, which might fall as late as April 25th. Now, within the Hebrew customs of holy days, high holy days, it's always consistent because it's based upon the moon. So you don't get to move Passover. It is set. It is set in time. So let's continue on reading. Benazet, who built the bridge of Avignon, has remained in the legendary tradition a boatman and a pontiff. In Latin, pontifex means bridge builder. This bridge enabled people to cross a particularly dreaded river in a city, Avignon, that later became, is this mere chance, the author's asking, that the seat of the papacy, of the pope, and its sovereign pontiffs from 1309 to 1377. Given that Easter is above all the feasts of the passage of the Messiah from life to death, then death to life, St. Benazet serves in part to explain the great myth of this equinoctial season occurring during the Paschal or Passover period, like the Messiah who went down into hell to free the souls of the just and give them passage to eternal life. Benazet helps the souls of men pass from one bank of the river of time to the other. We can recall the figure of Sharon, the ferryman of souls, who also haunts the life of Benazet, who had to appeal to a ferryman in order to fulfill his mission as a bridge builder according to the life of Benazet, and we're going to read that in a second. On the day when an eclipse of the sun occurred, a child named Benazet was guarding his mother's flock of sheep in the pasture when a voice from the sky suddenly commanded him, quote, "I want you to leave your mother's sheep to build me a bridge over the Rhone." The Rhone is a river, famous river in Edomite land. And in response to the child's reservations, the voice promised to watch over the sheep and to provide him with a companion who would lead him to the Rhone. Benazet then met an angel who had taken on the appearance of a pilgrim carrying a staff and a beggar's haversack. This individual led him to Avignon, showed him a J.O. boatman who could take him across the river in return for a small donation, and advised him to present himself before the bishop. Now, again, this is talking about before a Roman Catholic. When Benazet came before the prelate, that particular Catholic, he revealed to the Catholic the purpose of his mission. He was made the object of mockery and scorn, but the city's provost, or law enforcement, so to speak, told him, quote, "What the heck? You who are the least of men and who own nothing, you boast you can make a bridge where neither God nor St. Peter nor St. Paul nor Charlemagne himself nor anyone else could. All right, because the bridge is made from stones and lime, I will give you a stone I have in my palace. If you can carry it, then I do believe you will be able to build the bridge." Benazet took the stone that 30 men could not have lifted and carried it with as much ease as it were a simple pebble. This was how he inspired the admiration and conversion of the people of Avignon. He then went on to heal many who were sick because God performed miracles thanks to him. Now, if this is their folklore, all right? It's their folklore. The royal shepherd. The significance of Benezet's humble occupation as shepherd can be better understood in the light of the legendary biographies of various illustrious figures. We can explore some revealing comparisons between the modest provincial shepherd and other major historical and mythical figures to discover that though there is a stunning contrast between Benezet's social origins and the mission he is called upon to fulfill, this apparent contradiction can be easily explained by mythology or another story. In an article entitled, quote, The Royal Legend of Ancient Iran, G. Wittengren has shown that there is clearly a defined type of Iranian legend. Now, this is another, remember, this is a whole different, this is part of Asia, but Eastern Asia, and even more broadly, an Indo-European legend that recounts the ascension of a figure from obscurity to royalty. According to myth, shepherds raised the future king during his youth. The legends of Cyrus, Mithridate, Eupator, Romulus, and Artaxerxes conform to this model. Likewise, Percival in the Arthurian cycle, who is raised in the forest far from courts and knights, a veritable simpleton at the beginning of his adventures, belongs to this group of future kings with rustic origins. See, this is like the Lord says, he places over the nations the basest of men, the lowest of men. Even if he somewhat disappoints us by failing the test at the Grail Castle, through his episode, he is confronted with a test of sovereignty that might have earned him royal consecration. Lithobolia and the gargantuan exploit. According to the story, Benezet builds the bridge of Avignon on his own by first moving a gigantic stone located in the palace of the city's provost. Of course, he performed, let's read the note at the bottom about that though. In the Languedoc, a provost is a vigier, whatever that means. And actually, let's look that up. He is a, and that trans would be short for translation. Let's take a look and see if we can find the definition of that word. Vigiuier. Okay, the meaning of that word in English refers to a historical French legal position, specifically a magistrate or judge, quote, lowercase God, presiding over a viguerie, which was a French lower court before the French Revolution. So that viguerie is a French court. Lithobolia, or the gargantuan exploit. According to the story, Benezet builds the bridge of Avignon on his own by first moving a gigantic stone located in the palace of the city's provost. Of course, he performs this task with disconcerting ease through his Herculean strength. The saint's vigor here cannot help but bring to mind that of a very well-known figure in French folklore, Jean de whatever, or John of the Bear. This fairy tale hero, so it's not real, it's fiction, all right? It's fiction, not real. This fairy tale hero obtains his legendary strength from a unique birth. He is the son of a bear and a young woman. The bear kidnapped and carried off to a cabin. So the bear had sex with a woman and they had a bear child. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. According to his story, upon coming into his strength, Jean picks up and removes the stone that was blocked by that blocked the cave in which he and his mother had been imprisoned since his birth. So how did they eat? See, all this doesn't make any sense. As the story progresses, his first apprenticeship with a peasant gives him the opportunity to deploy his prodigious strength. This uncommon muscular prowess is also reminiscent of the gargantuan exploits. All right, and that's in that particular book. All right. Similar to the great Herculean feats in the Indo-European world, you see, they also came up with Hercules. Hercules is a retelling of the story of Samson, if you could understand that, if the Lord allows you to receive that. Many centuries later. It is analogous also to the strength of Lancelot, who, in a famous episode from Chatillon de Troyes, Knight of the Cart, picks up the tombstone in a cemetery in which he is to be buried after his death. We can note that in all these examples, the strength of the hero is displayed as he deals with moving a particularly heavy stone. We might conclude that these stones are in some way related to the origin of megaliths. All right. The similarities between the Herculean gesture of Lancelot and that of Benazet undoubtedly suggest the presence of a common mythic archetype behind both figures. Lancelot is summoned to fulfill a superhuman destiny, the destiny of a sovereign. His liaison with Queen Guinevere, figure of female sovereignty, theoretically lifts him to the rank of king, which poses real problems with Arthur, the queen's legitimate husband. So here it is, adultery, okay, adultery. And the story Arthur is a legend as well. It has not been found to be nonfiction, not been found to be a non-true story, although we do have evidence of Israelites being in the Arthurian line. There's stories about that. In the personalities of Gargantua, Lancelot, and Benazet, there can be seen the motif of lithobolia, the myths and legends concerning foundation. Now, there's a whole series, science fiction series called Foundation. It's pretty interesting. It has a lot of biblical references. That is not this. I don't remember in this book if it ever all explains this particular foundation. As F. Del Peck explains, quote, in the legendary tales about the construction of bridges, lithobolia, or the more or less supernatural moving of stones by a saint or demon builder, provides an echo of more clearly cosmogonic traditions on the formulation of the relief of a particular landscape by a supernatural being, that is a giant, a virgin, or fairy. Now, these are all things that the Gentiles believe in. The various characters of this thematic lithobolia reflect a unique being whose mythic nature is obvious. When this figure cannot be canonized or legalized, like Benazet, Christianity gives it a diabolical features. Christianity gives it diabolical features. The bridge of the devil. The stone-carrying devil is an old Provençal tradition in which Frederick Mistral was well acquainted. The Felibridge poet used it as an epigraph of his poem Nerto, which recalls the mission of this mythical creature in various desperate building situations, in particular the construction of bridges. In Celtic legends, Arthurian tales, and related folklore, the bridge is a major mythical site. Just like the mythical bridge of Thor and Asgard. We need only recall Chatillon de Troyes' fairy-like and mysterious bridge of the sword or bridge of glass in the Grail story. We can also turn to traditions and legends of European folklore. We're back to that European. This is the origins of this thing, the origins of this paganism. In all Celtic lands, and throughout the Indo-European world, I mean, wherever they are, truly a Euro-Asic basis, these are the legends related to the bridge of the devil, or of the deceiver, if you will, and this is about Esau, Edom. Now, at the bottom of the note is the Felibridge was a group formed by Frederick Mistral and 6 fellow poets who sought to promote the arts and language of their native province. Okay, Page 109. According to these, the cunning one built bridges in the hope of snaring souls as payment. But at the last minute, he is thwarted by a saint or is caught short by a break of the or is caught short by the break of day. The Segovia aqueduct, the bridge of Martorell, the bridge of Martorell, and the Toledo legend of the bridge of St. Martin also respond to this model. So they're all interrelated. And these are all Europeans from different areas that have the same legend. By all evidence, the devil is a figure who conveniently serves to cover another traditional figure which mythical stature can easily discern. The legends of the devil's bridge mask the presence of a pagan deity who has been given the features of Satan. See, let's get to the point. Satan, the devil, the serpent. This hero bridge builder was originally a giant possessing magical powers. And in fact, an episode from the prose Tristan seems to provide us with his name. To subject to a test the knights errant that were crossing the lands, a lord named Argan constructed a bridge where he would meet in combat every knight desiring to cross it. Isn't this bridge of Argan reminiscent of a bridge originally constructed by the fairy giant Gargantua? Now remember, Gargantua was also a creature, science fiction creature that fought Godzilla, I believe, or King Kong, one or the other, whatever. All but just movies, made up stuff. But it has a basis in what? Paganism, European paganism specifically. It even seems that the Lord Argan's name is contained in the name of the giant Gargantua. In fact, there exists 12th century, that is in the 1100s, literature featuring a mythical giant that allows us to confirm a form of this name before Rabelais wrote of Gargantua. In his valuable dictionary, the so-called Reverend Father Collier has related a typical legend concerning St. Cato on the bridge of the devil. It is told in Armorica that after leaving Great Britain, we know who's there, don't we? St. Cato founded a monastery on a small island between Port Louis and Auray at the mouth of the Estelle. The local people gladly went there, and the saint, wishing to facilitate their passage, joined his island to the mainland with a stone bridge that he had to start to build again after a first unsuccessful attempt. But his second attempt was successful, and the work appeared wonderful to the local folk, and this gave rise to those stories that are told repeatedly in various regions about what are called the bridges of the devil. So there's more than one. See, there's more than one bridge of the devil. And they all created by who? Esau, Edom. It was therefore said that the demon had demolished the first construction, and the Saint Cato, finding the devil busy at his wicked task, asked the evil one what he would want if he would build the bridge. The cunning one promised to perform the task on condition that he be allowed to seize the first soul that crossed the bridge. Once the job was completed, the saint came before the demon and released from his sleeve a large cat. Deceived in this way, Satan no longer appeared in the area. So we're talking about the devil and Satan. So they kind of put the two together synonymously, an evil spirit, if you will. In an identical scenario, the devil offers his assistance in the construction of the famous Brunhart Causeway in the north of France. So a lot of these things in these European lands are attributed to these demons doing things. And there are narratives about the demons building certain things. Likewise, in the Rhine, Victor Hugo recalls an identical tradition concerning the Cathedral of Strasbourg. After having taken part in the construction of the building, the devil is thwarted by swallowing a wolf in the place of a soul. So they're trying to say that men have out-tricked a spiritual entity, is what they're trying to say. But again, these are made-up stories. All right. Popular memory has unknowingly preserved another mythological tradition concerning the bridge of Avignon, built by a fairy giant substitute, Saint Benezet. The song is so famous today that no one dreams anymore of questioning its content. According to its word, people dance in a circle on Avignon Bridge. In the Middle Ages, this circle dance was called a choral or carol. See, just like you have the so-called Christmas carol, right? The people are in, they might not be in a circle, but sometimes they do. But if you look at the mass of people, you can make a circle out of it. All right, it's a grouping, if you will. The romance of the rose elevated it to the status of art, and the miniaturists did not fail to depict it. In 1940, Margaret Sauland devoted a wide-ranging study to the circle dance, which, despite several philologically uncertain hypotheses, remains very pertinent scholarship. If we are to believe medieval literature, so you can't believe everything you read, this circle dance often appeared in connection with certain rites and ritual dates such as the solstices, spring and winter solstices, and more generally, the changing of the seasons, which happens 4 times a year, which confirms its mythical nature. So we're talking about people who are trying to go to the so-called dark side, the evil side. The oldest mention of the carol in a text dates from the 12th century, which is 1100s, but the dance is certainly much, much older. So they're telling you the facts. Right? If it had been written about in the 12th century, it had to have occurred before the 12th century. It's easy, it's logic. We can certainly envision the ritual origins of this circle dance practiced at specific times of the year, at certain stone-covered sites. See, they go to that particular place to offer their sacrifices and praise of the demons. The circle dance on the bridge of Avignon is thus not accidentally associated with a bridge whose legendary construction required the intervention of a particularly robust young man who is capable of moving a megalith. Indeed, we can find, going on to page 111, the association of the magical rite of the circle dance with megaliths in the legends of Merlin. Again, this is legends or stories, narratives of Merlin, who has no basis fact. Now, this is supposed to be a magician, a witch, if you will, all right? They call him magician, whatever. Soothsayer is actually a witch, a male witch. After the battle against the Saxons, Uther had the memorial of Salisbury erected with Merlin's aid. These stones, moved from Ireland through Merlin's druidic magic, carried the name Caroli as, whatever that word is, Carol of the Giants. Carol of the Giants, according to the manuscript conserved by the Municipal Library of Tours. So this is actually an official book in the library. The case of Benezet is simply a variation on the motif that remains functionally connected to the same context. That is, people dance in a circle on the bridge, whereas the Irish stones dance themselves through Merlin's magic. This motif of dancing stones is well known in French folklore. Another Edomite, the French Edomites, the French tribe of Esau, Edom. Paul, whatever his name is, and Pierre have recorded legends of stones that dance, drink, and even bathe. See, these people are out of their doggone mind. The movement of these stones is connected to certain times of the year, solstices and equinoxes, and because they move, they allow entrance to the other world, which they otherwise guard and block. Avignon, the bridge, and the city of the Pontiffs, city of the Roman Catholics, the leaders of the Catholics. In Celtic mythology, the bridge builder who establishes a junction between the banks of the river is always an exceptional being. In fact, the Celtic hero Bran, made his very body a bridge to enable his men to cross a river, calling out as he did so, "Let he who is chief be a bridge." The bridge possesses eschatological symbolism in shamanic tradition. It took on spiritual and political significance in both the Roman world and the Middle Ages, because these people believe in all kinds of weird ish. Roman emperors originally carried the title of sovereign pontiff. So the original popes were the Roman emperors. Its medieval transfer to the church's leaders can probably be explained by the symbolic meaning granted to both the bridge and the pontificate. Well, it is Rome after all. It is the Roman Catholic Church, a natural progression. For Romans, the pontiff was a minister of the cult responsible for the management of the calendar and religious holidays. You see that? So that's what the Pope does. He manages, still does manage the calendar, their calendar and religious holidays. He therefore asserted himself as a kind of master of time, which is the definitive role of Benazet, who, by his work as a pontiff bridge builder, opened the road to the beyond, the other world, to the wandering souls in search of eternity, or in search of eternal life. All right, they're going to finish this up. Last page, 112. The life of St. Benazet constitutes the Christianized episode of a myth or of a story narrative in which a fairy giant, such as Gargantua of folk legends, or even a simple fairy, such as whatever the name is, transported megaliths for the building and founding of sacred sites. So all of these bridges in Europe are, that are stone are probably what they would call sacred sites to do their paganism, to their worship to evil spirits. This motif is confirmed by the storehouse of French legends. So they've kept a catalog of French legends. Reincarnated in Benazet is the figure of a pontiff ferryman, a veritable master of time and passage, capable of guiding humans over the secret paths of the other world during the middle of the Paschal period or Passover period. Easter was thus a Christianized version of a devil tradition. What are those devil traditions? It constituted a Christian reply to the Israelite Passover and gave a Christian dimension to the great Celtic myths and passage of the other world. The labor of Benazet can be combined with that of Martin, Blaise, and Christopher, who during the great rifts of time commemorate the same mystery of passage. So these people think that they can come and go to the land of the dead, if you will. So this has been the transitional period of Easter.
Mr. Henry, these monkey shines like to have me bust the scene.
I say, profit sharing is something you earn, Emery.
Ooh, Mr. Henry, if you don't sound just like him. Lord, what kind of monkey shines is you perpetrate?
Who the hell you think he is?
I was powerful thirsty, Mr. Henry, and now I can conjugate more proper-like. What you gonna do? 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 What you gonna do?
So let's get into some scriptures. You see, now you know the truth. Now you know the truth. Now you know the truth about ishtar, astarte, ISIS. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do after the truth has been revealed to you? John 8:32. Then said Yahushua to those Jews which believed on him, those Jews are from the tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, and a scattering of the other Israelites from the other tribes. If ye continue in my word, meaning what he says, his instructions, which are the commandments, the law, statutes, and commandments, in the faith of Yahushua Mashiach, then are ye my disciples indeed. So none of these so-called people in Catholicism or Christianity, the 2.1 billion or so, are actually disciples of the Messiah because they do not continue in his word. They don't do anything that he says. Verse 32, this is the point. And ye shall know if you continue in his word and are his disciple. This happens in 32. And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Not set you free, shall make you free. Where are you free first? In your mind. You have to be free in your mind, loosed from the matrix in your mind first. You see, because what has happened is we're going to dispel and get rid of all of these Easter deceptions revealed by Philippe Walter, who explains his peoples, the Edomites, the Europeans, Gentile rituals dealing with a lot of things. But in this case, we're going to talk about Easter. Now, we're going to look at another scripture, and you see that wooden cross there. All right, with a Edomite on it. Look like he's being gagged, okay? He's being gagged. All right, so we're going to take a look at Deuteronomy chapter 28. We're going to see, and also there's more than one scripture that talks about this, but we're going to take the one here. Let's take a selection of scriptures that deal with us worshiping gods of wood and stone, and we have 6 of them. Okay, we're going to take a look at Deuteronomy 4:28, and it says, and there, well, let's back up. Let's read a little further. That's Deuteronomy 28:28, but we're going to take a look at verse 27 because this explains the Israelites being scattered and who would be scattered amongst. Deuteronomy 4:28, not 28, not Deuteronomy 4:28, but we're going to start at verse 27 of Deuteronomy 4. And the Lord Yahweh shall scatter you among the nations, you Israelites, among the nations, among the Gentiles, the heathen, and ye shall be left few in number among the heathen, whither the Lord Yahweh shall lead you. Verse 28. And there, amongst those heathen and Gentiles, ye shall serve gods, the work of men's hands, as you see right there on the screen, wood and stone, which neither see, they can, those wooden things made out of hands, whether it be metal, wood, glass, whatever, they cannot see, they cannot hear, they cannot eat, they cannot smell. All right. But if from thence ye shall seek the Lord Yahweh thy power, thou shalt find him. If we seek after him, to do what? How do you seek after him? You follow his commandments in the faith of Yahushua. If thou seek him with all thy heart, with all thy mind, and with all thy soul, meaning your body, because remember, the soul that sinneth shall die. So it's talking about your body. Your soul is everlasting. Okay, so we're going to go on to the next scripture, saying the same thing. And it is in Deuteronomy 28, and it's verse 64. And let's see, let's back up a little bit in verse 63. And it shall come to pass that as the Lord Yahweh rejoiced over you to do you good and to multiply you, so the Lord Yahweh will rejoice over you to destroy you, you Israelites, and to bring you Israelites, you, to naught, to nothing, which is what he has done. And ye shall be plucked off the land whither thou goest to possess it. Verse 64. And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from one end of the earth even to the other. That's only Israelites. Ain't no JWOs involved in that at all. And there, amongst all the ends of the earth, thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. Right there on the screen. And among these nations shalt thou find no ease, Neither shall the sole of thy foot have rest, but the Lord Yahweh shall give thee a trembling heart, a trembling mind, and failing of eyes, and sorrow of mind, and thy life shall hang in doubt before thee, and thou shalt fear day and night, and shalt have none assurance of thy life. That's the end of verse 66. All right, let's get the other ones. Now, this is what we're supposed to do to their gods. All right, this is in 2 Kings chapter 19, verse 15. And Hezekiah prayed before the Lord Yahweh and said, O Lord God of Yisrael, which dwelleth between the cherubims, thou art the God, capital G, even thou alone, of all the kingdoms of the earth, all these kingdoms of the Gentiles, okay? Thou hast made heaven and earth. Lord, this is verse 16, Lord Yahweh, bow down thine ear and hear. Open, Lord Yahweh, thine eyes and see, and hear the words of Sennacherib, which have sent him to reproach the living God. He sent one of his servants, some leader in the army, to reproach Israel and the God of the Israelites. Verse 17, of a truth, Lord Yahweh, the kings of Assyria have destroyed the nations and their lands, and have cast their gods into the fire, for they were no gods, but the work of men's hands of wood and stone. Wherefore they have destroyed them. You see, it's easy to throw the wood and stone or any other created thing of the hands and destroy them, all right, into a fire. Fire is all consuming. And the Lord says that he is a consuming fire. And we have three more. We're going to take a look at Isaiah chapter 37 and 19. Where we're going to read, this is about Sennacherib again. So we just read that. We won't read that one. We're going to take a look at the other one. Okay, now this is Daniel chapter 5. We're going to read from verse chapter 3. Then they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of God, which was at Jerusalem, and the king and his princes, his wives and his concubines drank in them. Verse 4. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold, the gods of silver, of brass, of iron, of wood, and of stone. So they took the Israelites' dedicated implements to the Lord and drank out of them and dedicated and gave praise to their pagan gods of all of these things, gods of gold, silver, brass, iron, wood, and stone. And we have one left. It's going to be Daniel 5 and 23. That's really reiterating the same thing as earlier in Daniel. So that includes the information about the gods of wood and stone. And now they have many, many gods today. All of the Gentiles have their own gods that look like them. The Asians have a god look like them. The Hamites have a god look like them. They have multiple gods. The Asians have multiple gods. The Arabs have a god that looks like them, and they have multiple gods. And the Edomites have multiple gods in these Christian religions, all right, where they are the image of that particular god. The Israelites don't have an image. We know what the Father and Son look like. We know what the Israelites look like, but we've been scattered all around the world, intermingled amongst the people, so we look like all the other nations. We look like the Asians, the Arabs, the Africans, and the Europeans. We look like them because we intermingle with them. So if your father is an Israelite, the children are all Israelites, not the mother, but the father. So this has been Christianity, the origins of a pagan religion, because we're dispelling the Easter deceptions that have been revealed by this author, another Edomite, Philippe Walter, explains his Edomite European Gentile rituals. I leave you in the most capable hands of Most High Yahweh, Bashem, Yahushai.
What you gonna do?